First of all, let's give a big round of applause to the best damn housing director in America, Sally Martin O'Toole. Sally, it has been an honor and privilege and joy to learn so much from you over the last 4 years. We have a lot of challenges in our city, but every day I know I feel confident about our city's future because Sally Martin is at the helm of our building and housing department. And I want to just thank this organization, VAPAC, for all that you've done for our city and our region for the last 20 years. Cheers to 20 years. I know my entire cabinet relies on your research and your policy recommendations to really guide our administration in terms of how we're rebuilding our neighborhoods across the city. And I will say this, we have fought the good fight together as a community around our Residents First legislation. And so many activists and key folks in this room made that possible. So on behalf of my administration and on behalf of the amazing residents of our great city, I want to present this official proclamation honoring 20 years of VAPAC fighting the good fight to make our city, our region, and our state better. God bless and congrats again on 20 years. Say something, Frank. Here you go, take the mic.
I wasn't expecting this. I'm so pleased that you're here to help us honor this. I really am. And I whispered into his ear a moment ago, I said, you made the best hire that anybody could make. Not the only one, but so thank you for your leadership. And I could go on and on about some of the things I'm thinking in my mind about, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not going to do that.
Next time.
Next time, right. Thank you very much, Mayor Bibb. Thank you. Here we go.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Tony Scott. I am the relatively newly appointed Director for Housing and Community Development for Cuyahoga County. Most of you have known me in the capacity of one of my 8,000 jobs at the city of Cleveland over the last 13 years. I'm okay. That's the better answer. That's the better one. So I will be brief. I didn't even want to say anything, but Frank told me I'd be disrespectful to my boss if I did not. So they got me on tape, Chris. I'm not being disrespectful until the camera goes off. But no, I would be remiss if I was already coming. So I'm here in my capacity as Tony Scott, a member of VAPAC over the last 13 years in one capacity or another, and appreciating the work, both the philosophical, the programmatic, and the practical work that we do in trying to effectuate change in our community. And so in my director capacity, I'm here to present a proclamation from the executive. I'm not gonna read it. You can all read it. It'll be posted somewhere. It'll be sitting up there. But again, he has to be in 1,000 different places. I was gonna be here already and make perfect sense, but he did not want to allow this occasion to go by without celebrating the work and all the advocacy that you do under the VAPAC umbrella and in your own individual capacity. So drink tickets, food, appetizers, great people, conversation. Do what you know how to do. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. For those of you who want to get your cameras out, this is your opportunity.
First of all, it's great to see you all here today. It's always great to be in the presence of all of the preeminent housing specialists in the city of Cleveland. I always have to recognize, once a council person, always a council person, but I want to recognize my colleague, Chris Harsh, if I could. Chris Harsh. Yeah. And then I see that you got the Hall of Fame of council people here today, and Tony Brancatelli, Brian Cummins, Councilman Brian Cummins, and Councilman Matt Zone. And then the former council president, now he's over there agitating me every day. I love him to death. I'm just joking. But my friend and my neighbor, Jay Westbrook. So excuse my call. Just before I give this proclamation to Frank Ford, we appreciate all of the work that you guys do for Cleveland City Council and for the city. I really, truly have, remember when VAPAC first came on the scene and Tony Brancatelli was like the housing guru specialist for Cleveland City Council. And I always would wonder where he would get all of this magnificent data from. And finally, I learned his secret was VAPAC. And the work that Frank Ford and all those guys do, now Chris takes advantage of all of that information, which is why he's going to do a great job on DPS. But what you guys do is so valuable. In order to make sound decisions, we need to have great data. And we need to have great policy researchers to really be able to be honest with us and be able to guide our policies. We've been able to do some very transformational legislation with Director Martin around Residents First and some other things. We've been really, really cranking up our efforts around housing policy in the city of Cleveland, and that could not be done without VAPAC. So I won't read this long, boring resolution, but what I will do is say, on behalf of all the Cleveland City Council, the members of Cleveland City Council, as well as the citizens of the city of Cleveland, are extremely proud to recognize the Vacant and Abandoned Property Action Council, VAPAC, on the special occasion of their 20th anniversary and honoring its leadership in advancing housing stability and community renewal throughout Greater Cleveland. And I will say, be it resolved that the members of Cleveland City Council are extremely proud to celebrate the 20th anniversary of this remarkable milestone of VAPAC, and further commends the organization's commitment to strengthening neighborhoods and expresses profound gratitude for its continued dedication to ensuring that Cleveland's housing landscape is equitable, resilient, and rooted in opportunity for all. Frank, on behalf of all the Cleveland City Council, thank you so much for all you guys do.
I'm Sally Martin O'Toole, the Director of Building and Housing for the City of Cleveland. I wanted to thank you all for coming tonight to honor the collective work, dedication, and magic that is the Vacant and Abandoned Property Action Council. As much as VAPAC is a unique, highly democratic, and collaborative undertaking, I think we can all agree that without Frank Ford, there would be no VAPAC. Frank is someone who needs no introduction. His career in community development spans 5 decades and began on Hessler Street and University Circle in the early 80s. As a young Kenyon College graduate contemplating going to law school, he met a young lawyer, Phil Starr, and the two organized the University Circle Tenants Union. Graduating from Case Law School furthered his commitments to grassroots community organizing. In the early 90s, as a professor and researcher for the University of Colorado, he started the Denver Community Reinvestment Alliance, organizing Black, Native American, and disabled populations around banking discrimination. His groundbreaking research on small business lending was cited in a speech by then attorney Janet Reno and published in the Wall Street Journal. His career in Cleveland began at Union Miles Development Corporation, then Neighborhood Progress, and now he serves as a senior policy advisor for the Fair Housing Center. For 20 years, he has brought together stakeholders and decision makers from government, nonprofit groups, and educational institutions to sit at a table together every month to discuss issues related to vacant properties and neighborhood stabilization, and to coordinate efforts to improve outcomes for neighborhoods. The Vacant Abandoned Property Action Council serves as a national model for collaboration and best practices. A comprehensive study was conducted by VAPAC on tax lien sales, and the report published in 2015 resulted in numerous policy changes that dramatically reduced adverse outcomes. Like many policy documents produced by VAPAC, this paper has been shared throughout the city and the state of Ohio. And when we think about the fact that this 77-page study was the effort of 16 VAPAC members on a volunteer basis, it's pretty awe-inspiring. An impressive 20-year study on investor activity published by VAPAC in 2022 has been consistently cited by media and national housing practitioners, most recently referenced in a 2025 paper on national investor activity by the Lincoln Land Institute. Frank's comprehensive annual study of the region's housing trends incorporates a detailed analysis of home sale data, foreclosure trends, and lending on a neighborhood level. Groundbreaking work. Not surprisingly, this has generated national publicity and called attention to our area's uneven recovery along racial lines. Frank has the courage to ask the tough questions and has used research to prove the things we see happening every day in our neighborhoods, call attention to disparities, and formulate ideas and policies to create equity and fairness. Frank's unique ability to translate complicated metrics to plain, impactful sound bites that gain attention is truly his superpower. Please join me in calling Frank Ford to the stage and thanking him for his continued passion and dedication to this work that we all hold dear.
I did get a warning that this might happen. Anyway, I just want to say a couple things. What leads up to these 20 years? There's a couple people who really had an impact on my life. Sally already mentioned one of them, Phil. 50 years ago, I met Phil Starr. I knew nothing about community, knew nothing about community development, community organizing, and he taught me a lot. It was inspirational. So you're hiding back there. And has continued to be a friend. Yes. A second person who really influenced me in 1985 was Eric Hodderson, who hired me for my first job as an executive director of a CDC. Well, I wasn't executive director, I was your attorney, right? That's how I started. Receivership. Yes, receivership. Filed the first case in the state of Ohio. And Eric, and then he hired me again at Neighborhood Progress. So he's had a huge impact on my life, and I really appreciate his mentorship. There's a third person who was here earlier, not here right now, but I do want to mention. When I became an executive director at Union Miles, I also knew nothing. I didn't even use a computer. Mark McDermott was at CSU at that time, working for Norm Krumholtz, and Mark spent hours, endless hours with me, showing me how to do budgets, how to do pro formas for projects. And Mark, you're not here, but thank you so much for the time you spent with me. And all that leads to how do we do this, and how did I do this? So there's a number of people. There's more people than that I'm sure helped me and influenced me, but at least in terms of pre-VAPAC. So we're going to start with one more thing before we start the rest of it. I want to just say also, when I think about what am I most proud of in the last 20 years, and certainly there are things like the papers that Sally talked about, the fact that they were collaborative. I didn't write them. There were, as she said, the 16 people worked on that tax delinquency paper. That's extraordinary. We spent a year on that. But I'm proud of the fact that we have 4 active committees. We call them working groups. Each of them has a co-chair. So there are 8 people who every month volunteer their time to work on issues and work on producing position papers and whatever. That's what I'm really proud of. And the fact we have an executive committee of 6 people. You see the agendas I put out every month. Those are all run by the executive committee. It's what I'm proud of, that there's a collective effort. So I know that I just got this really nice, thank you, Sally. But what I'm proud of is the number of people who actually do the work and are invested in it and willing to take the time to do it. That's, to me, great. So without any further, what are we doing next? I think we're supposed to bring up here approximately 15 people. Oh, the list. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to do this. Okay, so I'm calling up to that stage Eric Hodderson. Oh, no, wait a minute. Hold on. Don't go anywhere yet. I knew I'd mess this up. Before we do that, I want to honor two people, Alan Malik and Joe Schilling. Alan, where are you? Not here. In fact, let me say, as we go through the next hour approximately, when you're sitting there saying, oh, Frank missed this, just yell it out. Just let me know so I can correct it. Back in, I think it was '04, I was at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, NPI back then, and I heard about an initiative to do studies of vacant property in cities around the country. And they'd done, Las Vegas, I think, was one, right? If they hadn't done a major urban city yet, and there was some PowerPoint or presentation, and I don't know which one of you gave it, and I thought, oh, this is great. We ought to bring these guys here to Cleveland. And I had money back then in my budget, thanks to Eric. And we had the money to pay for them to spend a year to come to Cleveland, meet with lots of people, do interviews, and then produce a paper in 2005, June of '05, called Cleveland at the Crossroads, that recommended we do VAPAC. We have this thing. Recommended also that there be the data system that we now have at Case Western. That was one of their recommendations. And anyway, at that time, Joe, I can't remember who you were with, but you're now with the Urban Institute, right? Alan, were you with Brookings Institution back then? And you're now with the senior fellow at the Center for Community Progress. And so what I want to do is give you a chance, each of you, to say something. Which one goes first? You want to go first? Okay.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say. I think, it's really easy, actually, to be a consultant or an advisor, show up in a city, talk to people, think about it, come up with some ideas, then hand the ideas to the city people and go home. That's easy. What is really tough is what you guys have done, is take those ideas, turn them into reality, and stick with them for 20 years. And it's not just going to be, it's going to keep going. But for 20 years already, to continue to build this organization and build the city's vacant property strategies. And, I spent enough time in the trenches in my misspent youth to know that this is not easy work. It's tough work. It's complicated. It's really tough to get results. And the beauty of it is nobody is ever grateful. If you get a vacant property knocked down, odds are the people on the block will say, yeah, that's great, but what about that property? When are you going to do that property? So this is tough work, and it never really ends because, sad to say, given the economic realities of Cleveland and large parts of the United States, you're going to have, as groups like VAPAC and the city and everybody work on either demolishing or getting vacant properties back into use, other properties are going to be going vacant around them. So it's a never-ending tough work. And I've got to say, I am in awe of the fact that everybody has continued to focus on this, sticks with it, is doing the work, and that's a remarkable achievement. And I just want to say thank you, and a particular thank you to Frank, whom I've now known for I don't know how many decades, 20 years at least, and who has put his heart and soul into this work. So again, thank you all, and I'm glad to have been a small part of it.
So if this was a movie, my part is going to be more of, it's like the first minute or two where you see a lot of background scenery and a little origin, and then you get to the main characters. So when Alan and I were then part of the National Vacant Properties campaign, and we came to Cleveland, the first thing, again, we had done analysis of these issues, but this was really the first major report for the campaign. And then, as many of you remember, in 2009, there was the announcement here in Cleveland of a new national organization, the Center for Community Progress. And that's what the campaign morphed in. But the first thing I remember is when we were coming to release the report in June, Alan and I were picked up at the airport by a taxi, long before Uber and Lyft. And the taxi driver was asking, like, what are you here for? And, you know, you could see that this guy was pretty intelligent. He probably had a PhD and he said, oh, I understand you were making recommendations to change different policies and programs. He says, you know what you are? You are alchemists. And I thought, now that, well, first I had to think about, like, what's the definition? Put it on your business card. Put it on the business card, right? And so in some ways, again, Alan and I have been in the lucky position to start here in Cleveland to diagnose some issues and come up with a framework that then has had a ripple effect in all kinds of cities. For example, Kermit Lind, who is out there, he and I started to engage in Memphis. And Memphis has probably the closest thing to VAPAC, not the exact same thing, called BEST, the Blight Elimination Steering Team. So some of the ideas and practices that started with VAPAC, started with that Crossroads report, have now been transplanted and adapted in all other kinds of cities. And all kinds, dealing with not only vacant properties, but preservation of housing in Detroit, affordable housing in other cities. But as we put together this report, there were all kinds of pieces. There was the data piece. There was the code enforcement piece. That was before there was a land bank. Mr. Rakakis, I see him hiding back here somewhere. In many ways, this report gave you a framework, a blueprint, in order to put some of these things in action. But it's great that you can still download Cleveland at the Crossroads and see the recommendations and the analysis and some of the pictures, because I took some of those pictures. But you need a point person. You need someone who is going to take the ideas and put them into action. And someone who is persistent, someone who knows how to translate research, make it understandable for policymakers. When the council president was here earlier talking about policy and understanding it, I was like, we got to put that on a TikTok or something, saying policymakers understand that you need data and evidence to drive your decisions. But you also need someone who's very, we'll just say, democratic and who can deal with a lot of different interests and politics. So from our vantage point, there was only probably one person who could play that point and try to bring all these different interests and people together. And in some ways, Frank, you are a master at connecting the dots. You are a dot connecting master in all kinds of different shapes and forms. So again, a testament to Frank's leadership, but also your commitment to Cleveland, going through all kinds of different challenges, administrations, crises. It's really an inspiration to see all of you here today to celebrate 20 years. So one thing to do for tonight, Frank, is, celebrate. You can.
I'll get a drink later.
Okay. All right, Frank. Congratulations.
Thank you both. Thank you very much. So what we're going to do is we are going to ask, I don't know how many people, a lot of them. The crowd's going to thin out here. On the front, 4 seats, Eric, Kermit, Jay, Paul Herdig. And then all of you are going to come up now. So the rest of you are going to be in the back. Bill Whitney, India Pierce-Lee, Mike Schramm, and Councilman Harsh, and Director Martin O'Toole, Treasurer Cromus, Mike Sweeney. I didn't see Mike. Is Mike here? Mike, there you are. Ben Fowler as well. And host organizations, Tanya Maness, Matt Zone or Isaac. Either Matt Zone or Isaac, I'm not sure which. And then my boss, Carrie Pleasance, and Jim Rokakis. Oh wait, Jim, you're gonna be last at the end. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, in separate groups, Merv Griffin, I'm gonna pose a question to these groups. And what we're gonna do is, the first 4 people are one group. You can come closer, feel free to do so.
It's like church.
So after I pose this question to the first 4, they're going to move. They're going to move in the back, and another group is going to come. I'm sorry, I've never seen anything like this. Never seen this before anywhere. All right. All right. So here's another thing. The question I'm going to pose. I've already told some of them privately, look, if you don't like the question, just say what you already planned to say anyway, whatever it is. But the first question, now this first group, these people were at the first VAPAC meeting, I think it was July 6th, 2005. There were about 10 or 12 people there, including Executive Ronayne, who was then working for Mayor Campbell. And we're not having them all, but these are 4 representing that group. Jim, you were there. Judge Bianca was there. I'm trying to think, I know there's others I'm probably leaving out. But here's the question. Looking back over the 20 years as you observe what we've accomplished, were you surprised that things evolved the way they did? And I'll say one more thing, which hasn't been said yet, I don't think. And that's that, of course, based on the name, Vacant and Abandoned Property Action Council, vacant property was how we got started. What to do about vacant property? But 20 years now, it's expanded to other things. Tax delinquency, issues affecting homeowners and renters, and that wasn't planned. And it wasn't my decision, it just evolved in a very natural, organic way. What are the issues people saw? What did they want to work on? Now, we're probably never going to change the name Vacant Abandoned. I mean, it's like, but then nobody even knows what it is anymore. They just say VAPAC. But with that in mind, I guess, are you surprised that things evolved the way they did? And again, go to another question if you don't like that one.
Well, I prepared some notes, and I had them on my computer to print off, and the computer ate it. So I don't have notes. So now I'm glad that happened, so we can just respond to the question. In terms of the memory of back in the day, I think we were all dealing with the subprime mortgage foreclosure and the systems that we had built very carefully, which were working. And we had bank participation, and we had CDCs that were really kind of producing, and the foundations were coming through. And so we felt really good, and then comes this tsunami. And the question then was, well, what do we do about it? And Neighborhood Progress had some responses with vacant property, a partnership with Cleveland Housing Network, and that we sued Deutsche Bank, and we'll talk about that. But more was needed, and the people then came to the table, creative responses across the board, and not mentioned that this so far, but I really want to make sure that Gus Frangos, who's not with us, I mean, there were pivotal people who made a difference, who are not staff, who kind of came forward to make a difference. It appears that my major contribution was to hire Frank and give him a budget. Yeah, well, give him a budget, tell him to raise hell, but not to do anything really stupid. And I think he succeeded. Yeah. So anyway, what I am impressed with again is the room, the way that if you look at the boards, the way this has evolved, and it's evolved in a way without a top-down structure.
and a bureaucratic kind of way of doing business. And it speaks to the people in the room and their commitment to community and to building a good place. And final point, and is we are now well into it, but we have another era with Trump and all the stuff he's doing. And we need to really respond in a way that kind of takes it to another level. And I think we learned that we could do it back 20 years ago, but it's time to step up again.
So we don't filter the video here, right?
Uh-oh.
Well, Frank, I'm glad you asked about, you posed the question the way you did, because I was afraid you were going to ask, like, who was wearing what at the first meeting. And given my advanced age, that would have really been a challenge. So I'm going to say I'm not surprised. And I think that the core value in VAPAC is breaking down the silos and tapping into the knowledge base that so many practitioners, activists at the street level. I want to give I was council president as VAPAC emerged, and it's not surprising that there was such a strong level of support for VAPAC from the city council, because no one heard it more, right? Jim, Brian, who else? Who else is council? Come on, Tony Brancatelli. We mentioned Ray and Gus. We're both city council people. They were confronted with people who see you as an authority figure and say, why the hell do I have this abandoned house next to me? And VAPAC unraveled the riddle and found the answers. And it's not surprising that it's still going, because the crisis is still going. And this is, I can't think of anything more apropos than the wizard in The Wizard of Oz, that we have been stripping back the curtain and seeing the confounded problems of this greed gone wild through LLCs, syndicates that are owning properties. And today in my retirement, I'm still fighting the fight in the Shaker Square neighborhood against the owners of buildings that were built in the Van Swearingen style, and with the Van Swearingen vision in mind, and now they are the objects of plunder from syndicated owners. The cities, my last note, this could have been seen as maybe a holy grail of the early VAPAC. The city of Cleveland brought its first civil nuisance case, and our attorney, Zach Germanak, no stranger to VAPAC, this is where the power of government reaches into the practices of advocacy and very hard work at finding the ways to bring down these people that want to profit off of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Oh, let me say, so Kermit, actually we met before VAPAC, as he and I were both working on receivership properties, but Kermit chaired the first VAPAC meeting, not me. Now, I don't know why we kicked you out, but we did. But we didn't kick him out. He stayed and was incredibly involved. And I guess when I think of other people who mentored me, you're one of them as well. But let me say, if you have the microphone. What do I do with this? Well, let's make sure. Is it on? Yep, it's on.
So increasingly, I find myself at gatherings like this being about the oldest person in the room. I'm relieved there's no coffin, right? Okay. And not all the gears are grinding as well as they used to, but I do want to make a comment about one word. And that word is a word that means the culture. It refers to the culture of an entity, a thing. The ethos is the word. It's not a familiar word unless you're an anthropologist or a theologian. But it has the emphasis of being spiritual and cultural all at the same time. Now, recognition has been given, and rightly so, to the way Frank manages and leads this enterprise that we're talking about today. But I want to make a note about the ethos that was there, present at the beginning, that is, in my mind and my perception looking back over all of those years, an essential ingredient. Joe mentioned that there have been attempts elsewhere to follow the precedent that was set here. Those have not produced the same ethos in many cases. Memphis is one that did, but others attempted to do what we've done here without nearly the kind of excess we've had here. We've had certain advantages in that, I think. At the time, in 2005, I'm going to guess that we were at least in the second, maybe the third generation of people who came through Cleveland State's Urban Affairs College. They had the imprint of Norm Krumholtz on them. And before that, there were a lot of people who were trained in community organizing. To my recollection, a lot of that came out of the Catholic diocese for a number of years. And these people and their successors, some of them became immediately involved in community development affairs, but many of them came along much later and inherited some of the ethos that brought people together in a way that was easy. It was not terribly structured, very respectful of one another, protective of one another, so that we could talk about difficult things without fear of being hammered. That's kind of important, because if you're in a room talking about the problem of why certain agencies of government will not share their data, and the key employee handling that data is in the room, it takes a certain amount of ethos that is respectful and kind. In order to have that person take the message back and say, boss, maybe we ought to rethink what we're doing here, because we're going to get value out of it if we do, and we're going to lose a lot of what we need if we don't. So I think I'm going to give credit, in my perception, to all of the people who were brought together with the background they had, whether it was at Cleveland State, at the college, or whether it was at the law school. I'm happy to say that a number of my own students have been involved in this from time to time. And I won't exclude Zach from that at all. Hi, Zach. I'm pleased to do that. But I think there is still that critical ethos alive that allows an organization that never incorporated, that does not take votes, that moves by consensus only, and that is based upon being factual and accurate. That's it.
Great. Hard to follow that. Hi, I'm Paul Herdig, still work for the county. I'm actually one of those young organizers Kermit just talked about. And Eric and Frank, I want you to know that on my wall of fame, I still have an old Union Miles Community Coalition button. All right. But my first impression coming to VAPAC meeting was it was an interagency working group with all that implies. I think it was Ribka that was on the hot seat most often in the early days, though there were others. What has impressed me is how VAPAC has grown from that to a body that does policy work, gets stuff done, and has a real impact on the world. So congratulations to everyone that's done that.
All right. And Paul gets the award for the shortest remarks. Thank you. So if, yeah, we're gonna, up to the front would be Bill Whitney, India, hold on, Councilman Harsh and Mike Schramm. Yes, sure.
Not having my notes, I missed something very important. I wanted to acknowledge Ray Pianca as a critical player in all of the systems that we developed. I mean, you can have theory and you can have policy, but you have to have you have to have the judge who sort of says, make it so. So thank you to Ray.
So with regard to the four people up here now represent funders of VAPAC, current and former. Bill was with Enterprise Community Partners in the first year of VAPAC, was a funder. Indy Pierce-Lee, as many will know, was with Cleveland Foundation. And then Mike Schramm, the land bank, has been a significant supporter financially of VAPAC for at least 10, 12 years, maybe 15 years. And then finally, Councilman Harsh, City Council has been a significant supporter of VAPAC for quite some time. So I'm not sure who should go first, but I'm just going to do left to right. And Bill, you're next.
Thank you, Frank. And we don't get a question, which is great.
What's your question?
No. That's your question. No, I was just going to disregard it anyhow.
Well, and you should disregard it anyhow. But so, like I said earlier, you know, when people notice, well, Frank missed something, just yell it out. So the question was going to be, all of you played a role in investing in VAPAC. Why do you think it was a good investment? Hopefully it was.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry I yelled that out. Yeah, I started with Enterprise in 2005. And before that, I'd say a year or two maybe, my boss, Mark McDermott, and did he leave? He was here? Oh, well then never mind. No. Mark had been working closely with Darrell Rush. Initially, Darrell was with with NPI, and then moved over to the city and was community development director. And Mark at Enterprise and Darrell spent a lot of time after they recognized that we really did need a property database. We didn't know a lot at that time. Of course, over the next 5 years, we learned a lot less when we had no idea who owned what or what they were doing, everything else. But back 2005, Darrell and Mark had invested in trying to create a good database and finding a good host to really work on that. And after a few kind of failed efforts, I call it, they found a meteorologist again, if I went through what I know about what people used to do, it's interesting. And thank God they quit doing what they used to do and they got doing good things like we're talking about here. But so Mark helped arrange for Mr. Schramm to get hired over at Case Western. Claudia Colton had set up a great database over there for social services, crime data, things of this nature. But Enterprise started giving a grant to have Mr. Schramm work on this database. That was one of the best investments we ever made at Enterprise. And again, Mark was really a leader on that. Secondly, when I was with Enterprise, when VAPAC got set up, and some of those people that spoke earlier and some others came up with this great idea, but then they had to figure out who was going to host it, and more importantly, who was going to pay for it. And again, I think Enterprise's in-kind contribution of Mr. Stram went a long way, but also it was decided that NPI and the Cleveland Neighborhood CNPP? No, CNDC, I'm sorry. Cleveland Neighborhood Development Corporation would co-host VAPAC. So Eric and Michael Ann Rensel, who was director of CDC umbrella organization, both came up with budgets and that nature. And lo and behold, I was shocked at Enterprise. The budgets didn't match, and there was a huge gap. And Michael Ann and Eric were fighting. And I couldn't believe it, because they never fought. They got along, peas in a pod, whatever. This is a bad joke here. Anyhow, so Enterprise, we stepped in and we were able to come up with some gap funding money. And at that particular time, our main objective was really hoping for a miracle, and that was that we would see VAPAC's #1 annual anniversary. That was a while ago. Frank and everybody did wonders. I think the biggest success over that first year was certainly the work that Mr. Schramm did, and also changing the name of the organization.
Just a historical fact, it was originally called the Vacant Property Coordinating Council. And as Kermit, I think, pointed out, the importance of coordinating so organizations don't work in silos, that was critical. But Jay said, wait a minute, what about action? Vacant Property Action Council. And I think Jay was right, because the coordination is critical, but then there's the policy positions that have an impact, and we're going to talk about that in the next panel. But thank you for bringing that up. India.
So, thank you, Frank and Bill. I actually was at NPI when VAPAC started, and running the neighborhood strategic investment initiative. So when I went over to the Cleveland Foundation in 2006, coming out of the community development, these are my peeps, right? So I go into the foundation, which, Cleveland Foundation, a little different back then, but bringing that knowledge to the work made it easier, and being a convener to bring people to the table. But over time, I was in those meetings, the longer meetings. I'll bring it up, the data piece, when the city had CityStat, that we had issues with getting the city to release the data, which led to Mike Schramm, and having those really hard, direct conversations as past organizers about why it was important. And our friend Chris Romaine is not here, but I'll leave that alone. But being part of it and understanding that as one that worked in neighborhood development and trying to build neighborhoods and looking at vacant properties and the impact it was having. So at the foundation in 2013, as the VAPAC began to evolve from Neighborhood Progress, it was Jim and Jay and Bill and Tony and who am I missing? I think Frank and a bunch of us got together to think about what was the next evolution of the VAPAC, which it moved to the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. And so funding that to make sure that VAPAC continued because it was important and the value that it brings to the city. And this work is hard. It's thankless work. It's not the work people want to do. And as we've all heard, you need someone that's going to get up every day. And that was Frank. He's going to get up every day, he's going to do the work, and he's going to take on the fight that was necessary, not for him, but for our community.
All right, so I'm going to try to be brief here. Hopefully I'm speaking on behalf of Ricardo Leone, the president and CEO of the Cuyahoga Land Bank. He was not able to make it here tonight and gives his apologies, but I'm probably the person who has been to the second most VAPAC meetings next to Frank. And so I've seen all the various partners come in and out, but here is a land bank Frank story. Picture it, 2008. Jim and Gus are running their legislation in Columbus. And Frank is organizing busloads of people to show support for, the land bank legislation. And I had the unfortunate responsibility to watch the movie that was on the bus. It was Meet the Parents. I hate that movie. It was organized by somebody out of Jim's office, but before the land bank was created,
I love that movie.
Before the land bank was created, just Frank was there to advocate, and it is just so important that everybody continue that VAPAC carries on. You've seen it talked about here, and from the land bank's perspective, there is, from the Crossroads report, we should have put together a scorecard for tonight of all the things that were in that report and all the things that were check marks, and VAPAC was key to many of those check marks, the data system, the work of getting, of supporting Jim and Gus as they organized for the land bank, and the things that have happened to make building and housing better over the years. It's just so valuable that it continues, and the land bank recognizes its importance to our community. So thank you.
Well, I originally didn't know what I was going to say, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. I can ramble with the best of us. But then they said, City Council. I'm here to represent City Council, and I keep forgetting I'm on this damn thing. Because, I was 45 when this all happened. So I apologize, because I am here on behalf of City Council, and we're in the room with Jim Rokakis and Brian Cummins and Tony Brancatelli and so many fantastic council members, and you have to listen to me talk. But thank you all of you that came before me, because these are the string of guys. And did I miss anybody's zone left, right? He's gone, okay. Westbrook, where's Jay? Oh, I'm sorry, Jay, right there. Wait, no, where's Jay? Behind me. Back there, okay. So I'll tell you why VAPAC is important to Cleveland City Council, right? We get lobbied constantly, like every single day. Like my job is to wake up and somebody asks me for something, right? And so you go to work and everybody's always asking you for things, and they're always trying to get money out of the city to do all kinds of things. And yeah, exactly, right? And I apologize, I didn't get you as much money as I wanted to. But, you know, everybody's got an agenda at City Hall. It's where agendas go to clash, right? That's what politics is. And so when you've got a group like VAPAC, which is bringing together people from various different fields and areas of interest that aren't necessarily there to lobby you, they're just there to tell you what the hell is going on in this city and in this county and in this world. With housing, it's very, very valuable. It brings us information in a way that is not actually asking us for a whole lot in return. It just says, here's what's going on with the mortgage situation in your neighborhoods, neighborhood by neighborhood, zip code by zip code, street by street. And this is invaluable information for us to have because we have to make pretty big decisions at City Hall. And having this information presented to us by people that have no other interest but to try to like pull back the curtain and show what's actually going on in your city is just incredibly valuable. I will tell you though, before I found out you wanted me to talk about the city council side of this, I got involved with VAPAC back in 2004, 5, 6, right in there. I wasn't at the first meeting, but maybe the third or fourth or something. I was with this group called Acorn, and I was a college dropout, and I was only really good at knocking on doors and listening to people. But the one of the things that everybody kept saying was, I'm losing my house, I'm losing my house. And like every single street I went down in Fairfax and in Mount Pleasant and in Glenville and Clark Fulton, everybody was losing their house. It was just absolutely horrific. So when I found out about this group of people that were explaining to folks how to deal with this, I brought in mortgages. I started bringing in copies of people's mortgages into the VAPAC. I'm like, hey, teach me how to read this. And one of the lawyers, I don't know if it was Gus or Kermit or Phil or somebody, said, look, all you gotta do is look at the front page and the last page. Everything in between is like irrelevant, right? It's all on the first page, and find the HUD one, find the HUD one. And so I started going out there and like digging this information up from people. I would knock on the door and be like, oh, are you losing your house? Can I see your HUD one, right? You don't know me. I'm a stranger, but I know this guy, this gal, somebody that's going to help. And that to me was just an education, right? It was a huge education. I somehow became the housing guy on city council because I started hanging out with you guys, and you guys all taught me how to do this type of stuff, right? I didn't know this. I didn't understand any of this. I can talk about ninja loans now, and I can talk about, you know, debt consolidation swaps and all these weird things. But the other thing that really blew my mind about VAPAC was you guys had NST. And NST was like the dark web before we had a term for it, right? Like, I got access to this thing. I was like, nobody should know I have access to this, right? Like, this is too much information for any one person, right? But I would go to like the people I worked for, and I was like, hey, you know, we could potentially send a postcard to every single person in foreclosure in this neighborhood like tomorrow. Like I know, like it's a spreadsheet, right? You just pick a column. And so we had access to all this information, which was just incredible. And we were able to do so much with this information as an organizer, as a community organizer. That really blew my mind. And then the last thing that I really loved about VAPAC, and it's been brought up before, Kermit probably said it better than I will, but just like the sort of anarchistic attitude towards the group, right? Frank's a coordinator, right? He's not really in charge, right? We'll let him know that from time to time. But I didn't have to raise my hand, right? I didn't have to ask for permission. If you wanted to blurt something out, you could blurt something out. I think he starts every meeting by reminding us that we don't actually follow Robert's rules, right? Which is kind of nice, right? Because you can just be there with a group of people and just have a conversation every single week or every other week. So all that stuff has been really, really enlightening. It's been just saying, you are my teachers, you are my professors, you are the people that taught me everything I know about housing. And the fact that you let us in, right? The fact that you let the community organizers walk in and hang out and be part of this and learn from you is just gratitude from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So the next four coming up would be under the category of collaboration and impact, and that is Director Martin O'Toole, Treasurer Cromus, Mike Sweeney, and Ben Fowler. In 20 years, when we ask ourselves, how are we going to do this? Are we going to do this again? I don't know. It is interesting. I've never seen anything like it myself. So Sally already mentioned something earlier when she was introducing me about the white paper that VAPAC put together. It was 100 pages, took a year to put together, and there were 16 people collectively working on it. There was no, in an academic sense, there was no principal investigator. There was no grant for $50,000 to pay for it. So it was pretty remarkable that it was put together. And the most remarkable thing is that, well, no, you know what? Let me not skip ahead. Let me let them talk about it. So who wants to go first? Sally? Okay, you're first.
Happy to be brief.
The question is, so what has been the impact, not just the tax white paper, but anything else, and why has it been successful?
Well, I can be brief about that. I think it's been successful because of the collaboration. And I really have to give credit to Treasurer Cromus, who is one of the most remarkable treasurers that we've worked with in our time here. And of course, Michael Sweeney, who is amazing, and we all love him. But the truth is, you know, we can make recommendations all day and no one has to take them. But they did, and they took them and ran with them and really created a product with tax lien sales that is much more ethical and impactful, and there's certainly a role for them. And this collaboration continues with the City of Cleveland for the first time ever, collaborating with the Treasury this fall to send out 12,000 letters to delinquent taxpayers, to do 6 outreach events that were standing room only, and 50% of the people left with a payment plan. And I think that's a remarkable accomplishment.
Thank you, Sally. I appreciate that. And I want to thank Frank for the opportunity to speak tonight. As a relative newcomer to Cuyahoga County, I have a little different perspective than some of you who've been here in the trenches all along. And I think as I've listened to the stories tonight and reflected on the work that this organization has done, it's just remarkable to me the not only the energy to do the work, but the commitment to continue doing the work when it's hard, when you could have stopped any number of times over these years. So I just want to tip the hat to you. We all stand on the shoulders of greatness, right? Jim Rokakis is here, who is obviously probably the best treasurer we've had, at least in living memory. So I don't want to go without saying that. But, you know, Frank continues to be a strong advocate. We have Michael Sweeney, who I work with, I get the pleasure of working with every day, whose heart could not be bigger and who could not have a better heart for service. But I see that, and I also see then that in this room are younger leaders who are taking that mantle forward, people like Zach and Tim Kobe and Aaron Miller-Tate in the back here from the city. There are a lot of people who continue to be dedicated to this work in our community, and I think that speaks as much as anything to the legacy of VAPAC, that there are others who are taking up that mantle to continue doing the work. And I don't want to let us get through the conversation tonight without acknowledging where we are here in Slavic Village. This place was chosen by intention, right? This was the center of the foreclosure epidemic back in 2008-9. And the work that you all have done to shine a light on that and to bring policymaker attention, not only to what's happening here, but to what we can do about it, I think just needs to be acknowledged one more time in this space as we gather together. So I wanted to say that. And then as to your actual question, what has the impact been? I know that our office has taken the white paper very seriously that you wrote in 2015 in particular. We have implemented just about every recommendation in that report, and we've gone further than that then and used that as a jumping off point to build additional things into the work that we're doing in the tax lien space and other places to make sure that we're respecting our homeowners, that we're giving them every opportunity that they can to stay in their home and stay housed, and that we're giving them a clear path to staying in their homes. And I just want to acknowledge too tonight that there are people in this room who do tax lien sales. And I don't know that that's a thing you would have envisioned 40 years ago when you got together. But it just speaks to the work that this group has done. I know that our past purchasers have made a point to speak to Frank regularly, to give him regular updates. And that speaks to the power collectively that we all have when we get together and work on these things. So having said that, I think probably the most important recommendation from that white paper that we took is to build consistent, ongoing community outreach. We have a tremendous team that Mike Sweeney leads that, as Director Martin O'Toole mentioned, has been very intentional about getting to every community that we can get to in this community to meet people where they are and to give them the information they need to make sound financial choices, to get on payment plans, and to do what they can to stay in their homes. So I think that's probably a good segue, Mike. And just again, thank you so much for everything you do every day.
Treasurer Cromus, thank you. I'd like to just start with, well, Kermit was mentioning about Cleveland State University. I'm a proud Viking. Some gentleman named Norm Krumholtz I did my thesis with last century, and it was about an update on the City of Cleveland Land Bank. So the ties are deep. Also, I would be remiss to not mention Professor Tom Byer as well, as we continue this to stand on the shoulders of those giants. Fast forward a little bit, had the pleasure of being in the treasurer's office, and I'm in my office, and Treasurer Kakis calls me and says, "Mike, yes, sir. Can you come up here?" "Yes, sir." We'll go up there. There's two distinguished gentlemen I've never met before, Kermit Lynn and Frank Ford. Jim goes, "Can you take them back to your office and talk about delinquent taxes and data?" "Sure." So that was my first experience with something that became VAPAC. Also, this sharing information and working together for the common goal and the good for everyone. And everyone in this room, the faces that I see, you kind of are my inspiration. You have the passion, you have the desire, you have the skill set and the collaborative effort to make things better for all of us and also the residents of Northeast Ohio. Been through a lot with Treasurer Kakis and everyone else. There's something called a land bank revolution. Spectacular. Why don't we give Jim and Gus, God rest his soul, a big hand, a round of applause. Thank you, sir. And this great group put something together. We've mentioned this thing called a white paper. There are many recommendations, as Treasurer Cromas indicated, and one was to bring back some of the previous research and outreach that was done in the past. Sometime later, something called the fishbowl came back to life. Yeah. So just want to thank everyone. And I would just like to kind of echo what Brad said. Brad is just remarkable, just moving forward. And I just hope and pray that as we move forward, more people continue with the passion that we have. Looking at every table, whether it's the prosecutor's office, the city of Cleveland, the CDCs, et cetera, the elected officials, everyone had that passion. And from a guy who grew up in Cleveland and is born in Cleveland, that makes me so proud of everyone in this room. And just thank you. You have made us in the county that much better. And on behalf of Executive Roname, Mr. Chambers, Treasurer Cromas, we just want to thank you. And we so look forward to continue working with you and doing the great work. And as Sally says, one property owner at a time.
So I think the thing that struck me the most in this conversation is realizing it's been 10 years since that report. And it's really extraordinary to be here a decade later, being able to go down that list and see that those conversations and those analyses of the data and that brainstorming and that collaborative process that got us to the how do we make this better, that those have been realized truly and even beyond in some ways. I think that the thing that struck me the most, beyond the amount of time that's passed here, is that there are themes and words that keep coming back around as we talk about the work that VAPAC's done. Someone, I think, described Frank as a connector of dots earlier. Kermit spoke about the VAPAC ethos, and the word collaboration keeps coming back in almost every set of remarks here. And as I think back on that process, not only of putting together that report, but then of spending the last decade talking about it and continuing that conversation, it reflects something that's at the core of so much of what VAPAC has done, in that it is about process and relationships that have driven things that could be disconnected conversations, particular expertises. It's brought them together, and the result has been so much greater than any of its component parts. And frankly, I'm grateful for the remarkable opportunity to have been a small part of it. And I really congratulate each of you on the role that you've played in all of this.
Frank, before I give just one more thing about VAPAC, Frank, of course, is running it along with many others, but the glue to the VAPAC success has always been Sally's Baked Goods.
That's true. Sally, at every tax meeting, Sally would bring scones, muffins, and we never knew what it was going to be. And whatever it was always good because it was baked that morning at like 5 a.m. So the next group coming up are the 3 respective host organizations over the 20 years. Tanya for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, Isaac representing Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and my boss, Carrie Pleasance, representing the Fair Housing Center. Oh, good, there's room for me to stand over here. So the question is might be a little bit different in a way because you all were hosting VAPAC at different times. And Tanya wasn't even at Neighborhood Progress at the time. So I think what I'm going to say is you could answer one of 2 questions. Well, why was it a good fit at the time? Or if, because they're all still involved. Tanya and CNP is still actively involved in VAPAC, comes to every meeting. And so the question might be, why do you keep coming to those meetings? So you got a couple different questions you can answer here. We'll start with Isaac. Oh, we'll start with whichever. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening, Isaac with Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and I think that question of timing is really important. So the way I view this is, why would a regional conservation land trust host the Vacant and Abandoned Property Action Council, right? And I think the answer to that is the people and the ideas at that time. People like Jim, Jay, Jackie, Robin, and obviously Frank, and so many others. And it was really just a moment in that time from 2013 to, I believe, 2021, that the transition occurred. And so what's interesting is that we, as a region, need to think about things in a systems way and really address sort of root causes, not just the symptoms of that. And the people that I mentioned were really focused on that, whether it was starting the county land banks or addressing vacant properties. If our cities and our counties aren't strong, our entire region suffers. And from a land use standpoint, that is very clear. But a lot of people, if you're like, well, if we're just talking about vacant houses, that might not make as much sense. And so I was fortunate to be invited. Again, that's something else that VAPAC is really special about. Anyone is welcome. And I was an intern at the time, and Frank said, hey, do you want to take notes at this VAPAC meeting? There's free lunch. I said, sure. And I quickly realized I wasn't even intelligent enough to take notes at this meeting. I was like, this is a very, very steep learning curve. Because at that point, it was about 7-8 years in. I mean, the systems, the conversations were so specific, so complex, and it was just a great learning opportunity, and still is. And again, I think VAPAC is a collection of people, it's a collection of organizations, and it's a collection of ideas. So the host organization really doesn't matter. It's really about that ethos that Kermit mentioned, and hopefully that is bigger than any one organization. There is an impressive lack of egos in the VAPAC meeting. Everyone sits, around a table. Everyone's opinion is valued and weighed by the argument you're making, not by the organization or your title. And that's something, again, back to the democratic aspect of it. And when Matt Zone joined the Land Conservancy and Jim retired and people change, it was evident that, the idea of VAPAC needed to continue. And maybe at that point, based on our staff and the work we were doing, it wasn't the best fit. And so, again, it's knowing that things change, people change, organizations change, but these ideas must remain and the work has to continue, which is why these handoffs, I think, have been so successful.
I don't even remember what the question was, but well, why do I keep coming to the meetings?
Well, why was it a good fit for your organization, or
we'll go with that. We'll go with that one. We'll go with that one because we're the Fair Housing Center, we are the current home of VAPAC, which I think we've been since 2022. Yeah. So in maybe 2021, Frank called me and said, we have VAPAC. No one from our organization at the time was a regular attendee at VAPAC, but it'd been something that others had said, you guys should go. You guys should go as a fair housing organization. And so Frank called me and said, we're thinking we need to find a new home for VAPAC and the Fair Housing Center. A lot of people were saying it would be a good organizational fit. So I said, well, tell me about it. Tell me about why it would be a fit, and we do fair lending cases, do all this fair housing work. After we talked about it, it seemed like a great fit. I'm like, well, what would be the downfall? Why wouldn't I want VAPAC? Why the cool kids are calling me and asking me to come if we could come sit at our table? So of course we want VAPAC to be part of our group. So it just seemed like a logical move for us, and a hopefully logical move for VAPAC. And it's been great to have Frank on staff at our organization. Our staff and I have learned so much from Frank. We have enjoyed many stories from Frank. We have learned a lot at our Christmas party, holiday parties, stories that probably shouldn't repeat, but it's been a great experience having VAPAC as part of our organization.
Thank you.
So I find myself constantly having massive imposter syndrome, and there could never be an evening when I felt that more, because the weight of what VAPAC has done over the years. And I feel like the first VAPAC meeting I went to was with Kamla and at the city of Shaker Heights, and really understanding a little bit, like you had said, Isaac, I sat through that meeting and I thought, well, I only understood about 40% of that meeting. So maybe that's the only thing that's happened, is now I think I understand most of it. But that sense of all of these people coming together to solve major problems in our community, and the fact that that hasn't changed. And I think the main through line maybe to CNP is that it grew out of organizing, and it had an it has an amazing capacity to bring those who are on the ground, seeing the everyday problems and issues, to then those who are making policy and can really impact change at the city level and at our organizations. And the one thing I'll point out, which I think is very important, is yes, there was a lot of collaboration, but I was at many VAPAC meetings where there was a lot of consternation, where there was a lot of stress, where there was I think, Kermit, you said it, where you're kind of calling out somebody in the room and trying to do it in a very kind and impactful way, because you know that that is the right thing to do. And that courage to do the very uncomfortable thing on a consistent basis, I think is really the legacy of VAPAC, and what I think this community really, really needs, and that we need to keep moving forward. Because I think, we talk about the moment that we're in, and we're in a moment where a lot of people feel very uncomfortable to speak about the things that really matter. And I think we are losing a lot of the organizing world that the community development corporations are critical to. And so I'm confident, though, that this organization and the people in this room will keep things moving forward. But I have to say, it's been really inspiring for me tonight to hear all of you, because in these moments where I feel a little like, oh, are we up to the task? All of you are up to the task, so we better be. So thank you for having us here tonight.
And I just wanted to say one more thing. I also wanted to say that we're really excited to welcome Heather to our staff this year. And Heather Lazar, and we should thank Heather for organizing all of this tonight. Done an amazing job.
Carrie just took my last big point. Was going to be Heather. And yeah, so as people are moving, and Jim, if you could come up on the stage, you're going to close this out. But I do want to say, we hired Heather on July 1st. And the difference, the things that, I will say I'm getting done, we are getting done, is just extraordinary. We wouldn't have had this event if Heather had not organized it. So she did an incredible job. And I think another round of applause is called for. And it isn't just that she organized this event, she's staffing the working groups. A lot more is getting done than it used to with just me. So thank you, Heather. I'm thrilled. So Jim, when he gets up here, is going to close out. I guess while we're waiting, let me just say one more thing about the Fair Housing Center. And I remember we had this conversation about, well, where might we move to next? And I think it was Sally who said, what about the Fair Housing Center? I think everybody in the room just said, oh my God, yeah. Because although it hasn't been expressly stated, and it really wasn't expressly stated here tonight, but for 20 years, underlying everything we've done is looking at the disparate impact, particularly on the east side of Cleveland, east inner suburbs. I mean, that has underscored virtually every issue we take on, we're cognizant of that. And so I think it was certainly appropriate for us to be at the Fair Housing Center. And thank you, Carrie, for welcoming us. So Jim, you are going to bring us home.
Yeah. Yes. I told Jay Westbrook, where are you, Jay? He leave? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I told him he couldn't take more than 3 minutes, but now I'm going to do that. You know, this is one of the things I love about Christmas. Is my favorite movie of all time. 1946, Frank Capra, It's a Wonderful Life, right? Is there a better movie to watch at Christmas? You know the story. George Bailey, the owner of Bailey Savings and Loan, a wonderful guy battling an awful guy named Mr. Potter, who for this purpose of this metaphor could be National City Bank or AmeriQuest or Countrywide. And you remember what happens? There's a mishap, and there's $8,000 lost, and it looks like that evil Mr. Potter is about to take over Bailey Savings and Loan, and there's a despondent George Bailey is at a bridge. He's about to take his own life. Well, my metaphor is Frank is 2007, and foreclosures are coming in at hundreds a week, and he's despondent. And he's at the high-level bridge, and he parks the car, and he's thinking, this is it. VAPAC's never going to work. Now, in the movie, there's a guy named Clarence Nobody. Remember him? That old guy came in. Jay, I hate to use you again, but for this purpose, it'll be, Jay, you're the angel. And you come down, and you take Frank off the high-level bridge and say, Frank, let me show you what would it be like if there were no VAPAC. And he takes them into this Cleveland neighborhoods where there's not 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vacant lots, but every single house is vacant. There's nobody left except for one house. And Frank's running up to the house and saying, hey, what happened? And he said, you need to go to the land bank. And the person says, what the hell are you talking about? What's a land bank? And they're throwing stuff at Frank, and Frank is running. And then Frank, Jay, you pick him up and you take him away from Cleveland. And you take him to other places like a large vacant hospital in Warren, Ohio, you know it, called St. Joe's, where prostitution was the problem and drug and people killed within that hospital structure. And he sees this and sees what a horrible thing has happened there, so it's not just Cleveland. And they take him to Ron O'Leary's hometown, Sydney, Ohio, where they go to this horrible burned out factory called Victory Metal, and Frank is there, and why are you bringing me here? He's asking Jay, Angel Jay. And then they take him from there to Portsmouth, Ohio, down to right there in Portsmouth on the Ohio River, a place called Boston, the new Boston Coke Plant, the filthiest site in Ohio, with the highest rate of childhood cancer in America, largely attributed to that filthy site. And then you realized that because of the work Frank did, and I forget how we segue from that to the good news. The good news is Frank is about to jump, and he decides not to jump, and he comes back, and he leads the effort. He leads the effort along with Kermit and others, and we have a land bank. And are you here, Ron? You know Sydney, all right. Hi, Karen, and there's Karen Pia. Right. Tell him about that place. It's gone, right? Yeah. So anyway, and so we bring him back, and he doesn't take a header off the high-level bridge, and he comes back and he organizes the people at VAPAC, and they create the county land bank. And the county land bank is successful, not just here, but all over the state. And there's now 70 plus land banks in Ohio. 80,000 abandos, as Jay used to call them, vacant abandoned homes, taken down. in all over the state of Ohio. We convinced the troglodytes in Columbus, also known as the state legislature, to adopt vacant property policies, to accept land banks, and to not only accept them, but to fund them every year. Money for brownfield remediation, money for demolition, and money for new housing.
It's a Christmas miracle.
It is! And Frank, I guess at the end you walk back into a big room and there are people like this, and they're cheering you, and this is the part where we all have this celebration night. So the impact you've had has been phenomenal, Frank. And we all look back, as my wife said to me, we're not old, Jim. Don't say we're old, just say we're older. All right, we're older, but it's nice to be able to look back and say we made a difference. And to the young people in this room, younger, and that would include Chris Harsh and Isaac and all the rest, the challenge now, the torch gets passed to you because we've taken care of a lot of the blight. There's always going to be more. There'll always be more properties need to come down. But now the task of rebuilding has to, I think, come into play. And you're going to have to rebuild the city. You have to repopulate the city. I've often thought, if we had not done this, Frank, the city's been losing population. It's no secret. It's 380,000 people. But I really believe this would have been a city of 330,000 people. It would have been worse because it would have been entire neighborhoods abandoned without your efforts. So we're here to celebrate VAPAC. We're here to celebrate you. Here to tell the young people in this room, we're going to pass the torch on to you. When are you going to do that, Frank? So, and that, Brad, what a great job you've done there. And Sally, I know you're going to fix the building department and all those here. And again, Frank, we're here to celebrate your successes, and I'm proud to call you my friend.
Thank you. I remember I once said to Jim's wife, I want to be like Jim when I grow up. I'm older than he is, though. So when I tell my wife about this, she's going to be surprised to know how close she came to losing me. I didn't know this either. Anyway, so it's 7:15. We've got 45 more minutes. Please enjoy yourselves. The food, the drinks, and I've held off drinking anything because I wasn't sure I could, manage this. So I'm going to have something to drink. So thank you all very much and have a good holiday.